Words are everywhere, so much that we don't even realize the text that we see. As editors, we're going to encounter times when we need to use text in our productions and we need our words to speak up. So this week, we're going to go by the book and look at some techniques to make our text move. It's an epistemic etymology of kinetic typography. Word up, we're cutting class. I'm not going to pretend to be a typographer or even a graphic designer, but there are occasions where I need to wear those hats in the edit bay. And as such, I need to be aware of the foundations of text before I begin to make it move. Let's turn to the archives and see if we can find out more on this.
Typography, a slideshow from adjunct propaganda. When the cow in the corner moves, advance to the next slide. Moo. Typography is the art of type design. Moo. It involves the design of typefaces. Moo. The choice of font. Moo. And the placement of type. Moo. All of these things go into conveying the message you want to communicate. Moo. Good typography leads the reader's eye through the text. Poor typography makes your text difficult to read and can harm your message. Moo. If you learn to choose your fonts and place them wisely, you'll satisfy your audience. Moo. And please, for the sake of all that is good, don't use Comic Sans. Moo. The end.
Alrighty, good to know. Do a search on YouTube for typography and you're going to find some pretty cool resources. Most of the time, I use static text in my productions. It's easy to read and serves the purpose I need it to inform the viewer and detail something on screen. I can easily create it in my editing app, but other times I need text to move and pack more of a punch. That's when I jump over to a motion graphics software package like Adobe After Effects or Apple's Motion. Both these programs can make some great looking moving text. Let's dig deeper on this. I'm going to start by making a new composition in After Effects and drop in a background. This one is very simple because my text is the main focus. I don't want anything to distract from it. I'm going to use the text tool and type in place here. I'm using a Garamond font because I like the fluid and classic book style of it. Right now my text just sits here, and we can do two things. Animate the layer, meaning we cause this layer of text to move, scale, fade, etc. Or we can animate the properties of this text within the layer. We'll do both, but let's start by animating the text within the layer. Let's click on the little twirly next to our layer in our timeline. It opens up and we have two more twirlies, one labeled text, the other transform. To the right of the one labeled text, we see the word animate with a little arrow button. Click on this as we want to animate the text, not the layer at this point. A selection dialog pops up, and from that we want to select position, as this is the first property we want to animate. Notice the text twirly opens, and inside it another twirly has opened that says Animator 1, which is what we just added. Inside Animator 1, we find Range Selector 1 and a position value that we can adjust. The range selector allows us to choose what parts of the text we want to animate by allowing us to select a start point and an end point, while the position allows us to set where things will move to when they're within the selected range. If we keyframe and change the range over time, we'll see the text change between its animated value and its default or standard value, in our case here, its position. The range, by default, is measured in percent, with 100 being all the way to the right of the text and 0 being all the way to the left of the text. Let's set a keyframe for our start to be at 0 and another for our end to be at 100. Now back up our Y value for Animator 1's position to be at a negative value that lifts the text off the top of the screen. Advance our playhead a couple of seconds and set a new keyframe for our start value in the range selector, changing it to 100%. Notice that all of our text shows up. If we preview the range between our keyframes, we can see that our text is now falling into place. This has brought our text in, but now we want to remove some of it and have only the word text remain. There's a lot of ways we could go about doing this, but one of the easiest would be to repeat what we just did. Add an animator to a property of the text, and then keyframe its range. I'm going to go back up to my text twirly in the layer and click on the Animate selector again, this time choosing Opacity as my property. Notice that in my layer hierarchy, an Animator to twirly has appeared, complete with Range Selector and Opacity property. This new animator and Range Selector only affects the properties that are inside it, the opacity. I'm going to set the opacity for this animator to 0 and set a keyframe for both the start point and end point in the Range Selector to 0. Notice that our text remains visible because nothing is within the range of the animated opacity. Let's move our playhead forward a couple of seconds and set a keyframe for our endpoint, raising it to 64%. Notice that only the word text remains. If we preview these new keyframes, we see the characters up to the word text fade out one by one. Let's make this fade appear to dissolve even more and animate another property using the same range within these keyframes. Next to Animator 2 in our hierarchy, notice the word Add with a selection arrow button. I click on it and it comes up with a selection dialog. I choose Property, and under this selection dialog, I'm going to choose Blur. Now under the opacity property in Animator 2, we see a blur property. I'm going to adjust this to around 15 pixels, and this blur will be applied to the characters that are selected within the Range Selector just as the opacity property. Pretty cool, they just fade off. Next I'm going to animate this layer, meaning I'm not manipulating a range of text, I'm manipulating the whole layer. I'm going to open my transform twirly and set keyframes for my position, rotation, and scale. I'll advance the playhead again and rotate, scale, and move my text to where I want it to be. Let's bring in our next text. We'll do these as separate words using the same methods to animate them as we did our first piece. We want to move this block of text as a single unit, which can be tricky because each word is on its own separate layer. One way would be to painstakingly go and animate each word individually, and then tediously make sure that all the movements matched up. An easier way, which is what we're going to do, would be to use a null object. We'll go up to our layer menu and select New Null Object. In our timeline, under the Parent option, we're going to select Null 1 for each of these 3 layers. Now we'll hit the twirly in the timeline next to the null object and drop down its transform twirly. We'll set keyframes for its current position, rotation, and scale. Then advance the playhead a little and rotate, scale, and reposition the null. Notice that the block of text moves accordingly as if it were one piece. We're going to continue to bring in text by animating its properties, spanning its range, and then parenting it with nulls. Okay, let's add those in and... Words are powerful when we say them and when we move them. Caution's always a good rule of thumb to use. But don't be afraid and try and move them around. What we did here today was rather simple in terms of method, just a little tedious. Increase your visual vocabulary by building on your successes. Combine the simple steps to make a more grand statement. I'm getting a little too wordy here now, so I'm just going to go back to playing with pictures. We'll see you next time.